I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club football. All right, so no guest this week. It's going to be a solo episode, and I'm going to talk about 3 things to watch in the remaining summer months for the U.S. men's national team. So a lot of people, including myself, are disappointed with the U.S.'s performance at the Copa America. But there's still a lot of important things to keep an eye on this summer that could have a big impact on the team going forward. And I'm going to talk about 3 of those things today. So the first thing is probably pretty obvious, and that's the future of the head coaching position. I'm recording this on Monday, and it's very possible that by the time you listen to this episode, maybe a decision has already been made about the future of Greg Berhalter. There was a report that by the middle of this week, U.S. Soccer was going to make a decision on whether he continues on as head coach of the USMNT or whether they bring somebody else on. And so we're still waiting to hear that. But as of today, no decision has been made. So I'm going to talk about both scenarios and maybe what to look for with each of those. So, the first one is if they do decide to move on from Greg Berhalter, what does that hiring decision look like for the new head coach? Is it a very quick decision, whereas they pretty much announce that Greg Berhalter's leaving and the same day or a few days later they announce, who the new head coach is? Or is it one of these, very long hiring processes that we've seen in the past that can last anywhere from 6 months to a year? My hunch is that this one would go more quickly because it's not necessarily a long-term project you're looking for. If they're going to bring somebody else new in, they're going to be looking at somebody that can just do the best job over this next 2 years to get us ready for the 2026 World Cup. I would also expect if Matt Crocker brings somebody else in, that's going to be somebody that comes from his network of people around English football. Somebody he knows from the Premier League, maybe somebody who's coaching in the Championship. And you look at what he did with bringing in Emma Hayes, to the U.S. women's national team. I mean, he has a vast network, of folks over there. I won't be surprised if he pulls somebody in, from that network. But he also, when Greg Berhalter was announced as the head coach, and he was talking about, I should say, when it was announced that he was going to be rehired as the head coach, and Matt Crocker was talking about some of the reasons, it seemed to be important to him to have this American manager. I think he talked about the word he used was the legacy piece, somebody who's going to grow the game over here. And so he may feel it's important to bring in an American manager. If he does, there's been a lot of reports that Steve Cherundolo would be the top candidate, and I fully agree with that. Now, even if Greg does stay on, there's still some things to kind of watch out for over the next couple months, and I would say I think it's at least a 50-50 chance that he does stay on. But if he does stay on, I would imagine will have to commit to some changes. Maybe we won't be made aware of what all those changes are, but behind closed doors, when he's sitting down with Matt Crocker on the board, it would be something like, we're going to let you stay on, but we need you to commit to XYZ changes, or we need to see XYZ. And so it'll be really curious to see, what those changes end up being. If that is the case, I would imagine it's going to be something around improving the discipline around the players. If you look at the bogus red cards that, I shouldn't say bogus red cards, they were legitimate red cards, but boneheaded red cards that were received from Serginho Dest and Tim Weah. There's obviously some kind of discipline issue with the team, but then also maybe something to freshen up the player pool, make it a little bit more uncomfortable for the status quo. A lot of these players there's a lot of talk that a lot of these players feel too comfortable. So does he do something different with the player pool? Does he bring in some guys to camp that haven't been there in a while, or maybe some new faces? Do some guys who have been playing more of a reserve role, like a Johnny Cardoso, get moved into a starting lineup to see what they can do. That'll be really interesting to see. The U.S. Will be in action again in September for 2 friendlies. The first one against Canada on September 7th, and then the second one against New Zealand on September 10th. I would expect the roster to be announced for those the last week of August, and so that's when we'd be able to see, okay, if Greg Berhalter does come back, what does that roster look like? Are there any changes? What might those changes look like? And then if it's a new coach, obviously, what that roster will give us the first preview of what maybe that coach is going to do with the player pool. All right, so number 2 is the U.S. men's Olympic team. The men's team will be starting their games on July 24th. Their first match is against France. And remember, all the men's Olympic teams are U23 teams. The U.S. just announced their 18-player roster that's made up of 15, of the U23s, and then they have 3 overage players. Those overage players being Walker Zimmerman, Jordy Mihailovic, and Miles Robinson. But this is the first time the U.S. men have participated in the Olympics since 2008. So this is exciting for a couple reasons. First of all, it's just awesome that we're back in another elite international competition. That's really good for the program. But also with this being majority U23 players, it's a great opportunity for some of these younger players that maybe have already received caps and been called in the team before, but not consistently or not very often. It could be a chance for them to maybe earn an opportunity in a bigger role with the U.S. men's national team, the senior team. And so that's really what I'm going to be watching for is, are there any standout players that make their mark, that make the coaching staff, whoever that is, pay attention and say, okay, we need to bring this player in because now they've proven that they can do something on the international stage, on a big international stage. Some of the names I'll be keeping an eye on are, first of all, the goalkeepers, Patrick Schulte and Gaga Slonina. So Matt Turner, number 1 goalkeeper for the U.S. right now, 30 years old, isn't playing much on the club level. We'll see if that changes this summer at all. The 2 guys behind him at the Copa America, Ethan Horvath and Sean Johnson, realistically, I don't think either of those 2 are really going to push him for a starting spot. So can, Patrick Schulte, who's likely going to get the start here, can he stand out, and maybe earn him a spot as maybe it starts as a number 3 goalkeeper at the next U.S. camp? And can he just do something that helps him say that, hey, maybe I am a guy that could push for a starting role, on the U.S. men's national team by the 2026 World Cup. Of the 3 overage players I mentioned, probably Miles Robinson is the one I'm most interested to watch because, he was once a starter for the U.S. men's national team, and now it seems like he's more kind of on the edge of the roster, I would say. He got called into Copa America, didn't play 1 minute. He made the decision last season, or I guess over the winter transfer window, to stay in MLS instead of going to Europe. And so now this is an opportunity for him to maybe show something significant on the international stage and maybe get the confidence back with the coaching staff that he can be a starter going forward. Or if he doesn't have a good performance on this stage, it could go the other way. John Tolkien and Caleb Wiley. So they both, these are 2 fullbacks, and we know one position where the U.S. men's national team lacks some depth is at fullback. After Serginho Dest and Anthony Robinson, there's just a big drop-off. Joe Scally, I thought, did great at the Copa America, but there's still a drop-off, I think, definitely between him and the 2 guys above him. And then after Joe Scally, I think there's another big drop-off. And so John Tolkien, Caleb Wiley, 2 young fullbacks that maybe could make their mark and challenge for one of the roster spots on the senior team. The midfield, Tanner Tessman and Gianluca Buzio, teammates at Venezia, who, again, these are guys that are playing in Europe, doing well for their teams, and they've been around, especially Buzio. I feel like he's had some opportunities both in World Cup qualifying 2022, and then he played quite a bit at the Gold Cup last summer. So he's someone that's been around the senior team, but has never really broken through. But maybe with good performances, Tessmann or Buzio could break through. I mean, Tessmann looks to be closing in on a deal to move to Inter Milan, a huge club. So his stock is definitely already going up. And then the forwards, I'm going to say all of these guys we need to keep an eye on, because the U.S. men's national team, they have a hard time scoring goals. And so we need more goal scorers. And so between, Paxton Aronson, Taylor Booth, Duncan McGuire, Kevin Paredes, Griffin Yao, these are all guys, with the exception of Duncan McGuire, that are already playing in Europe. And then Duncan McGuire is most likely going to be playing there, very soon. Can one of these guys go out and score 3-4 goals, and get the attention of the coaching staff, that way, because the U.S. men's national team needs goal scorers, really bad. Okay, so the number 3 thing to watch for the remainder of the summer is the European summer transfer window. So there's been a lot of players heading into the summer with uncertain, futures. And a couple of those we already know where they're going to go. Brennan Aronson is going to go back to Leeds, playing the championship. Serginho Dest signed a permanent deal at PSV. But still a lot of players with uncertain futures. I'd say the 2 biggest ones are Weston McKennie and Gio Reyna. So we definitely want to keep an eye on them and where they potentially end up. Weston McKennie looks like he's going to be leaving Juventus. I believe he still has 1 year left on his contract, but it does seem like things are trending in the direction of him leaving, although it kind of seems like that every summer, and then he stays, so we'll see. And then Gio Reyna finished up his loan at Forest, going back to Dortmund. Does he actually go back to Dortmund, or can he find another club where he gets some more playing time? But then some other guys, Matt Turner, he's really the firm number 2 backup at Forest. Can he go somewhere else and find the starting position, that he craves? Josh Sargent had a great season in the championship with Norwich. Does he potentially get a move up to the Premier League based on all the goals he scored, in the championship last season? Duncan McGuire, in MLS, he plays for Orlando, had the transfer lined up to Blackburn that fell apart due to an administrative error over the winter transfer window. Does he finally get his chance to move over there? Gaga Slonina, he's more than likely going to go out on loan again from Chelsea somewhere. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. Is it a step up from Eupen, where he played last season in the Belgian Pro League? And then, this isn't a summer transfer, or I don't think it's going to be a summer transfer, but I'm interested to see what happens with the Ricardo Pepi in the preseason, in their preseason matches. Does he get any more playing time? Does the arrangement with how he shares time with Luke de Jong change at all? Does he appear to be happy, over there? Just really kind of curious to see, how that unfolds. So that's the 3 things. When I look at these couple months remaining this summer, those are the 3 things I'm really going to be watching out for the U.S. men's national team. It's the future of the head coach, how the U23 team performs at the Olympics, and then how all these summer transfers end up, playing out. So thank you so much for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a fellow USMNT fan. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on X at FrankGarza007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.